Good morning. My name is Kelley. Oh, sorry. They have to do
Maybe a little.
Good morning. You can do better. Good morning.
Good morning.
Much better. My name is Kelley, and I'll be leading today's service. Kat Barnett will be presenting our message this morning. She's presenting Being Peace instead of the service originally planned for today, which will be presented at a later date, just in case you're confused. Our opening words this morning are by St. Francis de Sales. Never be in a hurry. Do everything quietly and in a calm spirit. Do not lose your inner peace for anything whatsoever, even if your whole world seems upset. So I just want to welcome you with, live from Fellowship Hall, it's our LCUUF Sunday service. Our announcements were on a slideshow before the service. If you didn't see them, don't worry. They were sent by email yesterday with the order of service. A few notes. Our building is now open to all for in-person services. We continue to offer our service on Zoom each Sunday for those who cannot attend in person. Wearing masks in the fellowship is now encouraged but not required. And now a special welcome for our visitors. If you're visiting with us for the first time or have returned or reconnected with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and tell us where you're from. If you're on Zoom, use the Zoom raise hand feature or just turn your video on and wave your hand and we'll ask you to unmute. If you're in the room, just wave your hand and someone will come to you. We'll start with the people in the room. And I think we have quite a few new people today.
Hi, I'm Suze. Thanks.
Okay, sorry.
My name is Sue, and I would like to introduce my friend Luis Vasquez, who is a longtime member of this fellowship. Let's make him welcome.
Okay.
Howdy, I'm Charlie from Wisconsin, and I'm down here for a week, and I'm glad to be back. I was here a couple years ago, just before everything hit, and then it prevented my return, and I'm happy to be back. Oh, and I attend a UU fellowship up in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin.
Welcome. Now let's switch to those on Zoom. Is there anyone new with us on Zoom?
I'm not seeing that anyone is new on Zoom.
Okay, thanks, Colleen.
Mhm.
Now let us light our chalice with these words that we sing together.
We kindle this light in celebration for the life that we share.
Our first hymn is number 121, We'll Build a Land. Please rise as you're willing and able and join us in singing.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of
That's one of my favorite UU hymns. Each week, we take time to remind ourselves that we belong to a community which cares for each other. We do this, in part, by sharing any significant joys or sorrows in our lives. If you on Zoom have a joy or a sorrow to share today, you can type it into the chat, and then we'll read those out loud. First, let us recall the joys. Whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or others. Those on Zoom can type the joys in the chat box, but we'll start with the folks here in the room. Are there any joys that people would like to share here in the room? Raise your hand.
I'm delighted that once again Teresa Sandy is with us. She'll be with us for the next month, and it makes us so happy.
I have a joy and a sorrow. Joy is that we're leaving next week to go get our dog, who has been being house set by some friends, who will be thanking God and everybody else that the dog is being returned to us. But the other is looking forward to coming back in 6 weeks.
I have one. You can do it from here. So I have two joys, and they both involve new groups that I've become involved with that are feeding my spirit. Thanks. Are there any joys to be shared on Zoom?
This is Colleen, and my joy is that we had rain in West Ajijic last night.
And in Central.
That's all on Zoom.
Now let us voice our sorrows or concerns, whatever you or the world may be holding. That's in need of our healing and caring thoughts. You're welcome to type sorrows and concerns into the chat. We'll start with folks here to give those on Zoom a chance to type. Are there any sorrows or concerns that people would like to share here in the room?
Yes, I would like to share a concern for Elizabeth Katz, our neighbor who is still dealing with a detached retina and is going to have surgery again, and she's pretty concerned.
Well, we're also concerned about another episode of gun violence in Uvalde, Texas. And my husband was born in Uvalde, and he happened to be there that day. So he's probably feeling overwhelmed.
Are there any sorrows to be shared on Zoom?
Yes, Devorah, we have a number. First one comes from Joan Ward, who says, deep sadness for my friend Alex Wilson, whose husband Emil Badawi died suddenly last week while she was in Australia, where her son-in-law was recently killed in a hit-and-run accident. My heart is torn for Alex, and I will miss Emil so much. He was the innkeeper extraordinaire at Casa Tres Leones and generous volunteer to LCS for so long, a wonderful man taken suddenly. From Lamar Allen and Penny Humphreys, our sorrow comes in saying goodbye to LCUUF as we make a permanent move north from Mexico in June. We remain very busy with preparations for moving. We keep many memories with joy of all that we have received from the fellowship, including so many of you individually. A sorrow from Candy Fields, who says, yesterday, May 28th, marks the date my beloved daddy, Will Fields, died in 2019. 2 days later, my beloved Uncle Cal, Calvin Ochiltree, died. I am very, very, very depressed. And a sorrow from Trudy Crippen, who says, sorrow at the passing of Merle Wright. And that's all.
Emil Badawi, who was the treasurer for many years at LCS, died while walking along as he used to do each morning on the bicicleta. I didn't know about this. It happened about a week ago.
And this candle, the care candle from our care team, represents those sorrows that are too raw, too difficult for us to share aloud. So many of us have had losses, partners, children, grandchildren, pets, losses that remain present with us every day. So many of us have burdens, anger, fear, and frustration, all of those things that weigh heavy on our hearts. We light this candle for all those unspoken sorrows. I think we need to take a breath. That's a lot. That's not on the script, but we need a breath. It should be, yeah. Whew. So now this is the time in our service when we ask that you remember that we share our gifts here through pledging and donations. Instructions for payments to the fellowship are on a slide during the announcements before the service each week. For the people here at the service, we'll pass a basket. And while you're considering your gifts to the fellowship, remember that each month, LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization in our Lakeside community. We share 1/2 of the offering collected at the fellowship each week with that organization. For the month of May, we've been supporting Tepewa Centro Comunitario, which is in the Tepewa neighborhood in the hills above Chapala. Among other community services, the Tepewa Centro Comunitario runs a thrift store, Tepewa Treasurers. It's right across the street from this building near the Huerto Cafe. I highly recommend it. If you're not attending the fellowship in person, please donate to Share the Basket separately or indicate what part of your donation is for Share the Basket. The offering will now be taken and gratefully received.
Good morning. The first thing that I would like to do today is to offer you a meditation to help you relax and smile so that you and others around you may feel happier. Find a comfortable position in your chair. Take a few deep breaths in and out. Soften your vision or close your eyes. As you breathe in, say to yourself, as I breathe in, I calm my body. As you breathe out, say to yourself, as I breathe out, I smile. On the in-breath, relax. On the out-breath, smile. Let's take a few moments to practice this meditation. Now, let's return to the room. Today's reading, now that is Deborah. She'll give you the reading.
So today's reading is from the book Being Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. And I don't know about the rest of you, but when you hear this, it's very, very appropriate for today. Even though life is hard, even though it's sometimes difficult to smile, we have to try. Just as when we wish each other good morning, it must be a real good morning. Recently, one friend asked me, how can I force myself to smile when I'm filled with sorrow? It isn't natural. A human being is like a television set with millions of channels. If we turn the Buddha on, we are the Buddha. If we turn sorrow on, we are sorrowful. If we turn a smile on, we really are the smile. We can't just let one channel dominate us. We have the seeds of everything in us, and we have to take the situation in hand to recover our own sovereignty.
Today's talk is about what has to happen for there to be peace in the world. Thich Nhat Hanh, a well-known Buddhist monk who died in January, wrote a book entitled Being Peace on that subject. Thich, my understanding is that Thich is the family name, wrote over 100 books during his lifetime. And this is the only one I've read, but it has stayed with me for many years. He wrote extensively about mindfulness, meditation, prayer, and what he called interbeing, how nothing can exist alone without everything else around it. Mindfulness and meditation are about being present in the present moment. I learned the truth of some of the Buddhist ideas about mindfulness after my daughter died. When she was 20, it's been 9 years. Going through my days in a fog of grief, just trying to function and respond to those around me. I found that although the grief was always with me, when I paid close attention in the moments when I was interacting with my friends and family, those present moments were fine, even enjoyable. I still had my friends and family around me. And ordinary tasks changed the channel from grief. Ordinary tasks. One of the wonderful things about meditation is that you can do it anytime at all. Soon after I first started meditating, I found that I could use very small pieces of my day to be aware of my present moment. I drove a lot. Houston is a big place, 40 miles from one side of the city to the other. Our church was 17 miles from our house. I found that I could use my time stopped at red lights to focus on my present reality. I could look around to see where I was. I could look at the people around me. Maybe they were crossing the street or waiting for the bus. I could look at the buildings and the landscaping. I could notice the weather. It rains 60 inches a year in Houston. I could notice how my body was feeling. It was good practice in being fully present in my life. And then it was over. Just a minute or two, and I didn't have to feel like I was failing at meditation the way I used to feel when I couldn't keep my mind on it for 5 minutes. Later, I started using my time doing common tasks like dishwashing or sewing to meditate. It's a matter of focusing on your senses and your task and letting your thoughts go. While washing dishes, I often just concentrate on feeling the temperature of the water and the slipperiness of the soap. I smell the soap. I focus on the task. I now meditate almost every time I am doing hand sewing. Let the thoughts go and focus on your senses and the task. Let me pause here for a moment and say that there is a weekly meditation session, Richard, led by one of our longtime members, Richard Clark, available to you if you want to practice meditation with others. You can find more information in the announcements each week. Here is another quote from Being Peace. Thich says, "The therapeutic power of meditation is very great, as modern scientific studies are now showing. The practices of mindful breathing, sitting meditation, and walking meditation release tensions in the body. When we give ourselves a chance to let go of all of our tension, the body's natural capacity to heal itself can begin to work." Animals in the forest know this. When they get wounded, ill, or overtired, they know what to do. They find a quiet place and lie down and rest. They don't go chasing after food or other animals, they just rest. After some days of resting quietly, they are healed and resume their activities. Speaking for myself again, I have noticed that moods are very contagious. Most people know this, I think. Mobs participate in an emotional storm. It seems to me that we all go around with an emotional antenna attached, feeling the emotions of those around us, sometimes as well as we feel our own. Have you ever been anxious at a party where you only knew one or two people? Everyone there can sense your discomfort. They don't always notice it consciously, but feel it under the surface. There are visual and body language cues that people can pick up on. People around you at the party may not approach you because they feel your fear, and that's an uncomfortable feeling. Something I now believe is that you create your own reality, your personal reality. We can easily understand some of how this works. If you make a decision and it doesn't turn out well, and you don't learn from that, or you ignore it, more disappointments will follow. What is more challenging is to reflect on the relationship of your thoughts with what happens in your life. To go back to that party where you were nervous, you might attract a type of person who might wish to take advantage of you. Another reason to make a practice of calming yourself. If you are happy and relaxed, the people around you are more likely to be happy and relaxed. If you are tense and angry, those around you will be too. Which environment would you choose for the people around you? Which would you choose for your children? We must be leaders and help the people around us. And if you are a leader, what can you do for everyone better than to give them the gift of calm and freedom from fear? We all say we want peace in the world, but what that means is we must ourselves be at peace with so much suffering in the world and in our own lives. This sometimes seems out of reach. We have the capacity to change the channel and not focus, at least not so much, on the anger, fear, and suffering we see and experience. Another thing from the book, Being Peace, that has stayed with me, so much so that I think about it fairly often, is a story he tells about a boat full of Vietnamese refugees that was boarded by pirates. One of the pirates raped a young girl who subsequently threw herself over the side of the boat and drowned. Thich says that at first he was angry with the pirate. What a horrible thing to do to an innocent young girl. Part of that thinking was the thought, I would never do such an awful thing. How could he do that? He must be a very bad person. Then, on further reflection, Thich said to himself that perhaps if his life had been the same as the pirate's had been, that he, Thich Nhat Hanh, might have done the very same thing that the pirate did. How awful to contemplate that you yourself might do something so terrible. But our life experiences have such a profound influence on us, we can never expect that others will feel or react the same way we do. Thich says that life can be like that small boat full of refugees on the ocean. People are often frightened, and their situation may be perilous. He says we need people who can smile and walk peacefully to save us. He tells us that you are that person. Each of you is that person. The idea that my life could have been different enough that I might be like that pirate is one that has really stayed with me. I find myself applying it everywhere. Human beings love to tell themselves stories about why people do the things they do, and we are mostly wrong. Why? Because we are applying our own reasoning and assuming that it is the same as the reasoning of other people. In fact, it is usually impossible to know why people act the way they do. They may have what they think is a good reason for doing bad things. Maybe their parents were abusive or addicted or absent and didn't teach them the right way to behave. But whether they have a good reason or a bad reason or no reason for behavior that injures others, it doesn't matter much. We are all just human beings with many experiences in our pasts who act according to what we have learned. Our job, when we witness interactions in which people are injured, is to remember that if we don't understand that we cannot feel superior because we are lucky enough to be able to feel empathy, lucky enough to have had a good home and good parents to raise us, we still do not understand very much. Thich says that when you understand, you cannot help but love. This is the essence of what Buddhists call Buddha nature. Quoting Thich again, you have to practice looking at all human beings with the eyes of compassion. When you understand, you love. And when you love, you naturally act in a way that can relieve the suffering of people. So, Kat speaking again, you might think, how can I love those who injure me personally? All of the great spiritual traditions speak of befriending your enemy. If you begin with retaliation, there will never be peace. Here is a story from my life. In the place that I worked for 20 years, there was a woman who had poor people skills. She was great at her job, but didn't often have much direct supervision to do. She was the assistant director of the program, and so when I worked with her, she was in charge. I was very fortunate that she was not my direct supervisor, and that her boss, the program director, was a very smart person who could see how she affected people and also cared about everyone who worked there. He was always building us up. This lady was not all bad. She did have some empathy, but when she decided that you weren't doing what she thought you were supposed to do, look out. I have generally been well respected in my work, and over the years was promoted when that was possible with increases in salary and responsibility. Somewhere around year 10 of the 20 years that we both worked in that place, she decided that I wasn't doing the job the way it should be done. And when we worked together, she often belittled me and generally made my life hard at work. Here's an example. There was a big project that almost everyone in the office was working on. She was heading that up. When people are working hard and have to stay late, everyone gets tired and cranky. She said she was tired of being the bad guy driving everyone and told me I was in charge. I said, great, thanks. But a little while after I started giving instructions, she came back and said, no, I could not be in charge. Full-time work is a big part of anyone's life. It was impossible for me not to take all this personally. I would feel angry and hurt and go home and cry. I hated her. Of course, I wasn't the only one. I witnessed her once walk into a room full of people working and clap her hands and exclaiming, "We're not working fast enough." Ask yourself what effect that had on the clerks doing data entry in that room. I eventually began taking antidepressants, and that helped a lot. But I couldn't get away from her, and I had fantasies about pretending not to hear her when she was talking to me. I imagined turning to someone else in the room where she had spoken to me and saying, "Do you hear something? It sounds like there's a mosquito in here." That's something you can really do, right? It is a blessing that she was never my direct supervisor, or I might have quit that job that I loved throughout the time I was there. I ultimately left that job for a promotion. I worked in a different program, and I never had to speak to her again. Yay. Now, here is the thing that has come to me after years of rumination on all of that. I could have taken a look at myself. None of us are perfect, but we really don't like to look at ourselves or think that we might be wrong, right? We say to ourselves, there is nothing wrong with me. You, on the other hand, there were things I could have done better at work. Deepak Chopra, who is another person whose writings have influenced me, says everyone we meet in our lives is our teacher. We can learn a lot from anyone who crosses our path, if we really look. I could have learned from her. Again, she was very good at her job, but calmly looking at myself was something I was not able to do at that time. It's so much easier, and it makes us feel good, to blame others. For me to calmly think about my own mistakes might not have changed her, but would have been better than blaming and hating her. Even though I know she was unskillful in the way she acted, I have to take some responsibility, too. I have since come to understand that holding on to anger and hurt is never productive. In fact, holding on to those negative emotions will usually make things worse. I remember waking up crying 10 years after an incident that hurt me. I decided that day that suffering for 10 years over something that happened so long ago was not something I wanted, and began to work to let the pain go. There is so much suffering in the world already. Why increase it even a little bit? by letting those pains stay inside you. For me, meditation was the key. The practice of letting your thoughts go while you meditate increases your power to let them go whenever they arrive, and diminishes their power over you in your everyday life. These days, if someone says or does something that makes me feel angry or hurt, I know ways to address that. I might say to the person, "Why would you say such a thing to me?" To get her to acknowledge that she acted in a hurtful way, and hoping to provoke some reflection on her part. But it took me at least 30 years to learn to do that. It's not intuitive or easy to deal with a person who acts in a hurtful way. Of course, you may not always be in a situation where you can use those skills, especially in a workplace. Confrontation may lead to unpleasant consequences. That is when you must fall back on other ways to calm yourself. Deepak Chopra again says that we should not go around like a bundle of conditioned responses. If someone insults us, we are likely to feel angry or hurt, but we all have the capacity to take a minute or 2 or even 3 before we make an angry response or feel hurt and internalize that. We can always take a deep breath. Always good. And consider our response. Can we imagine why the person acted that way? Could it be that there is something in their life that caused them to act the way they did? Is what they did different from what they usually do? If so, maybe there is a problem in their life causing them to be less than kind today. We always have a choice about how we react to what happens in our lives, and we can choose to react in a way different from the way we might if we react immediately from instinct. When I think of the mean woman now, I remind myself that she had some difficult things in her life. I know that she went through a divorce that she did not want. I also know that she bought a business and subsequently lost it, forcing her into a great deal of financial trouble. She had a little outside job in addition to her major responsibilities at the program we worked in for some years. I know it must have been stressful to work so much. This does not excuse her actions, but may go a long way towards explaining them. At this time, At this time, I would like to offer you a meditation as a way to neutralize your feelings towards people who you dislike or who may have hurt you. Find a comfortable position in your chair, soften your gaze, or close your eyes. Now, think of someone you love very much. Feel your love for that person. What do you want for them? Now think of someone you like, a friend. Imagine being with them and smiling and laughing. Feel how good that makes you feel. Feel your anticipation about being with them again. What do you want for them? Now, think of an acquaintance or a stranger, a neutral person, someone you don't know. Maybe you're beginning to like them. Maybe your feelings towards them are just neutral. How do you feel towards that person? What do you want for them? Now, think of someone you don't like or who hurt you. What was it about them that caused you not to like them? Could your feelings ever change towards them? Maybe you think, that person will never change. No, that person couldn't be my friend. Remember that every person in the world is trying to have more pleasure and less suffering in their life. Now, wish for that person you don't like to have more pleasure and less suffering in their life. It won't take anything away from you to send out that wish. Stay with that wish for a minute. Now, come back to the room. How did it feel to wish happiness on someone you don't like? You can do that, and it isn't hard. If you make a practice of doing that, it will become easier. You don't have to interact with that person. Simply wish that their life will have more pleasure and less suffering. Perhaps it is the suffering in their life that has caused them to act the way they do. This practice will tend to erase the bad feelings you have towards them and give you more calm and ease in your own life. I was surprised when I learned that the Dalai Lama spends time each day wishing happiness on the communist Chinese. Those are the people that stole his homeland and forced him into exile. If he can do that in the face of such a terrible tragedy, surely we can do that for someone who has made our life difficult or harmed us. Hate is like swallowing poison and hoping that someone else will die. That is what the negative emotions, hate, anger, and fear do to us. They act like poisons in our body. And the longer we carry them, the more damage they do until we are crippled and consumed by them. World peace is a noble goal. While we recognize that there are many formidable obstacles to overcome in working for the goal, we must recognize that it is possible and that there is a path forward. I have shown you some steps you might take towards peace in your own life. And in following those, you take steps towards peace for all. Our closing hymn is number 168, One More Step. Please rise as you're willing and able.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step. One more
Let us extinguish our chalice with these words which we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of commitment, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world.
It would be hard to find someone who has not known peace, at least sometimes, in their life. When I was growing up in a suburb of Houston, Texas, I never knew anything but peace. My home was calm and safe. My neighborhood was calm and safe. During my life, I have almost always felt safe. Surely that is possible for everyone in the world. Each of you can create that reality for yourself and the people around you. May it be so. Amen.
Now I've been happy lately, thinking about good things to come. And I believe it could be something good has begun.
Oh, I've been smiling lately, dreaming about the world just one. And I believe it could be someday it's gonna come.
'Cause I'm on the edge of darkness, and there rides the peace train. Oh, peace train, me take this country, come take me home again.
Now I've been smiling lately, thinking about the good things to come. And I believe it could be something good has begun. Peace train sounding louder, slide on the peace train. Jump upon the peace train.
Rendin chomchima arkidam pandate ilada mangaron unade kadi fadima joni eto mandola ar abodam dam dam bunam dam wadadima unade fadima joni joni unsakongo
Peace train sounding loud and glide on the peace train.
Oh, I've been crying lately, thinking about the world as it is. Why must we go on hating? Why can't we live in bliss? The peace train sounding louder, glide on the peace train. Ooh, come on, peace train. Peace train, holy roller. Everyone jump upon the peace train. Ooh, come on, come on, come on.
Come on and ride on the peace train.
Come on, come on, come on. Let's come on the peace train.
Come on, come on, come on. Peace train.
jumping on the peace train.
Come on, the peace train.
Peace train.
Good choice. Oh, that was Michael. Michael chose that. Thank you, Michael. Please stay around for discussion. Must be 11:30. I'm not going to compete. Good. Please stay around if you like for discussion. On Zoom, there'll be one large group, and in the fellowship, we have the opportunity to do the same. Here are some possible questions to discuss. If you don't stay to discuss them now, you might think about discussing them or at least pondering them at a later time. First one, do you find it hard to be positive during stressful times? Why? Second one, do you think it's useful to you to strive to be positive for the benefit of others around you? And the third one, are you able to wish happiness